Welcome to the Rare Coins Explorers, where today we unravel one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American numismatic history, a tale so tangled in secrecy, obsession, and error that it borders on legend, and it all begins with a single, seemingly ordinary coin, the 1975 D. Lincoln penny, a copper-clad anomaly so cloaked in minting mystery that its very existence continues to spark debate, fuel conspiracy, and haunt the dreams of collectors and historians alike. What if a small, unnoticed mistake at the Denver Mint turned an otherwise routine cent into one of the rarest and most mystifying coins ever struck, slipping through the bureaucratic cracks of a government mint during one of the most politically and economically unstable years in American history, a year already burdened with the aftermath of Watergate and the Vietnam War, when trust in institutions was at an all-time low, and vigilance in federal operations, like coin production, was, ironically, expected to be higher than ever. Yet despite layers of oversight, inexplicable things began to happen deep within the minting presses where flawed dies clashed, misaligned hubs spun off kilter impressions, and a shadowy batch of 1975 pennies bearing the D mint mark began to manifest physical traits that defied classification, including ghost-like devices with doubled outlines, oddly recessed date stamps, and whispers of designer initials that appeared in some specimens only to vanish completely from others, creating a spectrum of flawed cents whose inconsistencies went far beyond the usual error coin taxonomy, prompting a flood of reports from astonished collectors who noticed unusual planchet striations, rim anomalies, and even a few rare pieces where the Lincoln bust itself seemed slightly mispositioned, as if the die had shifted mid-strike or had been replaced by an undocumented prototype during a late-night production anomaly that, for reasons no one can explain, was never logged in official records, feeding a wildfire of speculation that a secret die trial was conducted at the Denver Mint under the radar, perhaps in anticipation of the upcoming bicentennial issues, or as part of an experimental shift in coinage alloys. An explanation that might account for the strange reddish gold hue observed on certain pieces believed to be 1975 D cents but which failed to match any officially sanctioned composition, leading some experts to wonder whether a shipment of foreign planchets was accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, mixed into the domestic cent run, a theory bolstered by metallurgical analyses that revealed unexpected trace elements in a handful of specimens retrieved from circulation decades later, often in the most unlikely places: a dusty coin jar in a forgotten Midwest attic, a child's piggy bank in Oregon, or buried inside a time capsule unearthed during a school renovation in rural Alabama, each discovery deepening the mystery, each coin slightly different, slightly wrong, and yet unmistakably connected by the same haunting aura of forbidden provenance, as if these pennies were never supposed to be found, never meant to endure, and yet they did, surviving long enough to provoke numismatic forums into years-long debates, challenge grading services with borderline impossible authentication scenarios, and force mint historians to re-examine 1975 production records that, conveniently, show signs of revision or unexplained data gaps during the very months these flawed coins would have been struck, coincidences that stoked the fire of suspicion that someone inside the mint knew more than they ever let on, possibly a rogue engraver or a disgruntled technician who left behind clues only visible under magnification, like the faint doubling of Lincoln's eye on a coin examined by an anonymous collector in 1991. Or the erratic spacing between the letters and liberty found on a coin mailed anonymously to a coin magazine editor in 2004, sparking a private investigation that led nowhere, except to more questions, more theories, and the slow realization that these anomalies might not just be errors but deliberate messages etched into the nation's smallest denomination, a theory so fringe yet strangely consistent with the pattern of inconsistencies, and which ties into a lesser-known chapter of mint lore involving a suppressed internal report circulated in early 1976 that warned of unscheduled die experiments and unauthorized planchet substitutions, discovered in the Denver facility but quickly buried beneath layers of bureaucratic whiteout, leaving behind only whispers among retired mint employees who now recall strange happenings that year: press machines running past midnight, shipments rerouted without explanation, coins struck and then immediately melted down before inspection, except perhaps not all of them, perhaps a few survived, a handful overlooked, smuggled, or simply forgotten until the right eyes spotted the wrong details. Details like the backward D found on a specimen in a Pennsylvania estate sale, or the coin that bore what appeared to be a second date faintly impressed beneath the 1975, a misstrike so unrepeatable that experts questioned whether it was a mint-made error at all or the result of an undocumented press reconfiguration. And as the legend of the 1975 D penny grew, so too did the obsession. With collectors chasing shadows and doubling back over worn-out leads, searching flea markets and estate auctions with the hope of glimpsing that one impossible variant whose existence, if proven, could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the U.S. Mint's operations in the mid-70s, and behind every theory, every discovery, every anonymous tip or dismissed anomaly, lies the same burning question: how did so many inexplicable traits end up in coins that should have been perfectly uniform? How could so many deviations have escaped detection in a mint system designed for mechanical precision? And, most tantalizing of all, what if we've only scratched the surface? What if there are still 1975 D pennies hiding in old cash drawers, pocket change, or beneath floorboards, waiting to be found by someone who understands the signs? A barely visible die crack here, a rotated reverse there, a mismatch in luster or strike depth or alignment that opens the door to deeper questions, darker histories. And the thrilling possibility that somewhere, out there, the final piece of the puzzle still lies. Undiscovered, untouched, and utterly game-changing. Next, 1992 D 1-cent coin. Today we unlock the vault of one of the most baffling, electrifying, and unresolved mysteries in the entire history of American coinage, a mystery that begins not with gold or silver, but with copper-plated zinc, with a single unassuming coin struck in 1992 at the Denver Mint, the 1992 D Lincoln penny, a coin that should have been utterly forgettable. Mass-produced, standardized, mundane, yet what if a small oversight, a nearly invisible detail, turned that routine piece into one of the most elusive, enigmatic, and hotly debated coins ever to escape the minting floor, a coin that numismatists have chased for decades across state lines, through old bank rolls, estate sales, and attic safes, not because of what it was supposed to be, but because of what it accidentally became, a coin marred by anomalies so subtle and yet so profound that it's left experts divided, historians puzzled, and collectors obsessed, because somewhere in that year, in that mint, during that chaotic window of early 1990s bureaucracy, automation upgrades, and record-keeping lapses, something slipped through the cracks, something that should never have left the die room, and that something is a variation so rare it challenges the very assumption of production uniformity, a close AM reverse design on a 1992 D cent. An architectural deviation that rewrites what we thought we knew about when the reverse spacing between the A and M in America was officially changed, a deviation that, according to official timelines, shouldn't exist, and yet somehow, impossibly, does. And as numismatic eyes grew sharper and more alert to detail, more questions surfaced. How could such a design error appear 2 full years before its scheduled introduction in 1994, and only on a minute handful of 1992 D pennies when billions were struck without it? Sparking theories of rogue dies accidentally or deliberately inserted into production, perhaps test reverses being quietly trialed in-house, perhaps a mislabeling of dies during the frenetic transition era of die hubbing modernization, a process that often left new designs sitting in uncertain limbo between planning and implementation, sometimes mislabeled, sometimes misused, especially during periods of administrative shift or equipment retooling. Was this the result of a die swap between mints? Or even an unauthorized early implementation of a new reverse design, perhaps tested at Denver in absolute secrecy and abandoned once discovered? But not before a few coins found their way into circulation, evading destruction, carrying a hidden fingerprint of the mint's inner conflict. And if that explanation strains believability, then consider the deeper, more troubling layers of this enigma. Reports of 1992 D cents found with ghostly impressions on Lincoln's shoulder, as if multiple strikes or faint die clashes distorted the field ever so slightly. Instances where the D midmark appears misaligned, enlarged, or off-punched, suggesting hand-punching anomalies in an era that should have relied on mechanical precision, hints that a hybridized transition was happening behind the scenes, half old-world craftsmanship, half digital evolution, and right there, caught in that technological crossfade, is the 1992 descent, refusing to conform. Revealing through its every flaw and inconsistency a hidden story about the U.S. Mint's operational vulnerabilities during a year already marred by budget constraints, workforce fluctuations, and internal documentation that reveals more redactions and gaps than clarity, including a confidential internal audit in late 1992 that referenced unaccounted die use and mismatched design elements. Phrases so ambiguous they spark decades of speculation, leading to wild but compelling theories about prototype dies being slipped into regular production lines, possibly under orders from upper management, or perhaps in defiance of them, a quiet rebellion from within the engraver's room, where creativity often clashed with regulation. And as the years passed and more collectors turned their magnifying glasses toward the minor inconsistencies of everyday coins, more bizarre tales emerged. 1992 descents with missing designer initials, letters in Liberty, that appear strangely thinned or machine doubled, coins with planchet striations so deep they suggest rushed metal rolling, or even foreign planchet contamination, a hypothesis not as far-fetched as it seems, considering the Mint's known practice of repurposing blanks during shortages or transitions. And suddenly the 1992 descent is no longer just a coin, it's a cipher, a keyhole into a hidden chapter of minting history, one where bureaucracy and error, secrecy and obsession, collide in perfect imperfection, fueling a cult-like following among collectors who've made it their mission to find one, to hold the impossible, to crack the case of a design inconsistency that continues to mock chronology. And as more discoveries are made, strange color variations, reverse ghosting, dye polish lines that suggest deliberate obliteration of features, an unsettling pattern emerges, one that leads many to believe this was no accident, that these coins were minted with knowledge of their difference, perhaps even as part of a covert quality control test, or as a means to monitor reverse design tolerances under field conditions. A theory supported by at least one retired Mint employee who anonymously reported in a letter to a coin journal that he remembered a batch of pre-release reverse dies being boxed for Denver by mistake during a hectic month when both mints were experimenting with reverse relief depths, and though unverified, his testimony aligns uncannily with the production timing and technical anomalies surrounding these coins, suggesting a truth far stranger than fiction. And if that's the case, if this was a mistake born of haste, mislabeling, or silent experimentation, then how many escaped, and where are they now? And could it be that some remain buried in circulation, waiting in dusty coffee cans, locked in forgotten bank rolls, or passed unknowingly through vending machines, holding within them the DNA of a minting anomaly so rare, so contested, so freighted with unanswered questions, that to own one is to own a piece of the Mint's own ghost story. And with every collector who finds a 1992 descent, holds it to the light, compares the spacing of the A and M, the angles of the memorial columns, the smoothness of Lincoln's bust, the alignment of the mint mark, the quality of the strike, the color of the surface, the feel of the edges, they're not just examining a penny, they're staring into the unknown, into a puzzle that defies resolution, a story still unfolding, a mystery with no final chapter. And so the hunt continues, driven by obsession, by wonder, by the thrill of possibly uncovering something never meant to exist, a coin lost to time, born in silence, carrying with it the fingerprints of oversight, or intention, or perhaps something even more complex. And the only way to find out, the only way to uncover the truth about the 1992 D. Lincoln penny and all its impossible features, is to keep searching, to keep asking questions, to keep believing that history has a way of hiding its greatest secrets in plain sight. Next, 2002 D 1-cent coin. Today we dive headfirst into one of the most unnerving, elusive, and unsettling tales in the entire history of modern American coinage. A story not of gold bullion or forgotten silver hoards but of copper-plated zinc and the staggering consequences of a single minting anomaly that shattered assumptions and challenged the very nature of quality control at the height of U.S. mint automation. This is the story of the 2002 D. Lincoln penny, a coin struck in Denver in the early years of the 21st century, long after the great minting experiments of the past. At a time when era coins were supposedly extinct, precision was absolute, and every cent produced bore the weight of computer-regulated perfection. And yet what if a small mistake, a nearly invisible one, made it one of the rarest, most mysterious coins ever struck? A numismatic enigma that has since become the obsession of collectors, researchers, and conspiracy theorists alike, for beneath its unassuming surface lies a series of anomalies so baffling, so far beyond statistical plausibility, that to find one is to open a gateway into a rabbit hole of secrecy, miscommunication, and possibly intentional obfuscation by the very institutions sworn to ensure consistency. For how else can one explain the growing number of reports over the past 2 decades from those who have stumbled upon 2002D cents bearing ghosted devices, vanished designer initials, or mint marks with misaligned punch angles that suggest hand entry methods supposedly abandoned decades prior, raising the hair-raising possibility that either forgotten technology was resurrected during a secret production trial, or that rogue dies with pre-modern characteristics were somehow activated by mistake, a possibility made more plausible when considering several unconfirmed but eerily consistent eyewitness accounts from former Mint employees who, in online forums and obscure numismatic journals, recall sudden last-minute die swaps in early 2002, allegedly to compensate for an unexplained shipment delay from Philadelphia, a delay that would ordinarily be unremarkable, except for the fact that those same weeks correspond precisely with the earliest confirmed sightings of the anomalous 2002D Lincoln cents, coins that bear striking irregularities when placed under high magnification, including partial doubling of the profile, flattened or ghost-like outlines of lettering, misaligned reverses, and in at least 2 documented cases, an inexplicably faint secondary impression of Lincoln's shoulder, as if struck by a phantom die or passed through a restrike process that the Mint has never acknowledged using in Denver that year, and when pressed for comment, official Mint spokespeople have referred back to production logs that conveniently omit specific details for the Denver Mint's output during the final weeks of Q1 2002. A fact that becomes even more suspicious when cross-referenced with an internal audit summary leaked in 2009 that cited irregular die usage patterns and unusual press recalibration events at that very facility during the same period, a set of phrases so nebulous and non-committal that many now believe it was a quiet effort to cover up a production incident that released experimental or misprocessed coins into general circulation, an event that would explain the emergence of several confirmed specimens featuring striking abnormalities, such as planchets with surface laminations resembling liquid streaks, edge anomalies inconsistent with known collar die configurations, and in one remarkable example examined by a private grading expert in 2014, a 2002D cent exhibiting an incuse, reverse ghost image of the memorial building that appears to have transferred from another coin, an impossibility according to standard minting mechanics. Unless die clashes or press failures occurred at such extreme tolerances that existing documentation protocols simply failed to record them, a theory lent weight by a Mint engineering memo from late 2001 outlining experimental testing of press speed upgrades intended to increase throughput at Denver, upgrades that may have pushed the hardware into zones of instability that allowed for minute die shift, punch misalignment, or improper striking pressure, each of which could explain certain aspects of the reported anomalies, but none of which adequately account for the strangest variations of all coins where the D mint mark is either fully absent, partially sunken, or rotated slightly clockwise within the die field, often accompanied by other irregularities like vanishing, FG, designer initials, spiked collars at the coin's rim, or shadow lines behind the portrait's profile that suggest an off-center die reset or improper hubbing technique, an alarming idea considering the Mint's claims of full digital die production in place by 2002. And yet if these errors were mere isolated incidents, one-off mistakes or damage incurred after minting, how can we explain the consistency across dozens of specimens found in unrelated regions, spanning from Oregon to Georgia to rural New Hampshire, always in coin rolls, always undocumented, always discovered not by dealers but by everyday citizens who knew something wasn't right the moment they turned the coin over and saw spacing that felt wrong, design elements that lacked clarity, and a haunting sense that the coin was telling a story it wasn't supposed to, that it was a survivor of a production event that has never been fully explained, never been publicly acknowledged, and that continues to confound even the most seasoned numismatists who, after exhaustive comparisons and metallurgical tests, cannot reconcile the precise nature of the anomalies. Tests that have revealed slight but consistent deviations in copper coating thickness, rim density, and trace elemental content, leading some to hypothesize that the planchets themselves may have been from a misallocated batch intended for testing or for international contracts, and if that's the case, then the story grows even darker, suggesting that the mint, perhaps inadvertently, released coins into public hands that were never authorized for circulation, coins that carry not just design irregularities but metallurgical signatures unlike anything officially listed in mint production records for that year. A discovery that sent shockwaves through collector circles when first reported in a little-known 2016 white paper by a retired minting chemist, who concluded that the anomalies may reflect a transitional material phase or undocumented internal test. A statement that opened the floodgates to speculation about whether we are dealing with a rare production error, or something more clandestine, something akin to a shadow trial or contingency minting operation that left behind physical remnants in the form of altered coins, remnants that now surface unexpectedly in garage sales, laundromats, and estate finds, their existence confirmed not by the mint, but by the growing body of collectors who are documenting, photographing, analyzing, and obsessing over the strange behaviors of these coins under various light angles, pressure readings, and even X-ray fluorescence scans, all of which continue to reveal inconsistencies that defy simple explanation, and the more people look, the more it seems that there are variants, subtle, evasive, and unlike any other 1-cent piece in the modern era, variants that speak of a moment when something went awry deep within the Denver Mint's machinery, a moment perhaps brushed aside, perhaps deliberately forgotten, but never erased, because the evidence still exists, out there, waiting to be found by the right pair of eyes and the right level of scrutiny, evidence in the form of a 2002 penny that isn't like the others, a coin that doesn't belong, a coin that shouldn't exist, and yet does, carrying within its copper sheen the fingerprint of a mystery that only grows deeper with every new discovery, every contradictory document, every anomalous test result, and every inexplicable trait that leads us to ask again and again, how could a system so precise, so controlled, so technologically advanced, have allowed such mistakes to occur, unless they weren't mistakes at all? Unless the 2002 Lincoln penny is not merely a production error, but a message in metal, a relic of miscommunication, or perhaps something more. Something intentional, something hidden in plain sight, waiting to be decoded by those willing to follow the clues, ask the uncomfortable questions, and look closer than anyone has dared before. Next, 1998 1-cent coin. Today we peel back the layers of one of the most unsettling, provocative, and unexplained episodes in modern numismatic history, a story that begins with the most ordinary of American objects, the 1-cent coin, and transforms into a relentless hunt for truth, anomaly, and buried history, all surrounding the enigmatic and confounding 1998 Lincoln penny, a coin that, on the surface, should have been a footnote in the standardized processes of late 20th century minting, yet what if a small mistake, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, made it one of the rarest, most controversial coins ever struck, a quiet breach in the otherwise rigid production standards of the U.S. Mint, a coin born in a year of bureaucratic transition, technological overhaul, and tightening secrecy, where a single overlooked detail, one misloaded die, one mismatched reverse design, one unauthorized hub, ignited a firestorm of speculation that has never truly been extinguished, because within the cold metallic sheen of certain 1998 cents lies a mystery that has captivated collectors for over 2 decades, and it begins with something as simple, yet shocking, as the spacing between 2 letters in the word America, where the typically wide gap between the A and the M suddenly narrows, signaling what would become known as the close AM, reverse, a design element that was not supposed to appear until the year 2000, a full 2 years later, and whose presence on a small number of 1998 cents triggered not only excitement but a tidal wave of confusion and disbelief among numismatists, because it suggested that somehow, either through clerical oversight, experimental design testing, or unauthorized intervention, the reverse die intended for the upcoming new cent design was prematurely deployed at the Philadelphia Mint. And even that explanation leaves behind more questions than answers, especially when you consider that the Mint has never publicly clarified how or why such a die would have been available, ready, and functional years before its official rollout, nor have they ever acknowledged whether the 1998 close AM was the result of internal testing, accidental die mixing, or something else entirely, perhaps something not even documented in official production logs, which themselves contain curious gaps and redacted lines during the third quarter of 1998. A period that corresponds uncannily with the known discovery window of these anomalous coins, and if that's where the mystery ended, it might be dismissed as an isolated hiccup in a mostly smooth operation. But what truly deepens the intrigue is that the 1998 close AM discovery soon led to a rush of scrutiny across the year's entire mintage, and what emerged from that collective investigation was a pattern of additional anomalies: coins with doubled dies in places not previously documented, pennies with ghosted initials or faint designer marks near the Lincoln bust that appear and vanish under varying light conditions, unexplained shifts in relief that make certain specimens look almost like prototypes, and even cases where the mint mark itself, though officially absent from Philadelphia struck coins, appears as a faint, out-of-place shadow, raising wild yet persistent theories that a Denver or San Francisco reverse die might have been misapplied or altered in secrecy. An idea dismissed by some experts and passionately defended by others who point to microscopic irregularities in strike angle, field depth, and finish luster as signs that the coin was not simply misstruck, but that it emerged from a deeper, more systematic breakdown in mint protocol, possibly connected to transitional hub testing or pre-release die trials that were never logged in public records, yet may have proceeded anyway under the radar. Orchestrated by a team operating under internal authorization that didn't survive the final administrative paper trail. And if that sounds far-fetched, consider that in 2003, a former mint technician speaking anonymously to a numismatic publication claimed that during the late 90s, there were several known but unpublicized, unauthorized die combinations that were used for brief test runs to evaluate visual uniformity under accelerated wear conditions, and that some of those test strikes, once thought to be discarded, were instead rerouted into general production to meet quota demands following mechanical failures. And while this account has never been verified, it aligns disturbingly well with the nature of the 1998 close AM cent and the clusters of other irregular 1998 cents found across the Mid-Atlantic and Midwest regions, often bundled in circulated rolls with coins of similar wear and toning, as though they had been introduced deliberately rather than accidentally. And as collector interest grew, so too did the reports of further inconsistencies. Striking misalignments so minor yet recurring as to suggest a single faulty die used far beyond its intended lifespan, die polishing that seems to have obscured or warped key design features like the bottom of the G in God, or the inner details of Lincoln's eye, and in certain examples, raised plating blisters that hint at metallurgical variations inconsistent with known zinc composition standards of the time, prompting metallurgical tests by independent collectors whose findings were never officially confirmed or denied by the Mint. And while many mainstream experts advise caution, labeling these pieces as simply late-stage die fatigue or environmental damage, they cannot explain why certain features, like the close AM or the presence of what appear to be hub doubling on Lincoln's chin and jawline, appear consistently across different coins from different rolls in different parts of the country, suggesting not random damage, but a controlled and repeatable anomaly originating at the source. A source that becomes even more mysterious when one considers the broader context of 1998 at the U.S. Mint, a year when die hubbing processes were being gradually converted to single squeeze techniques, which in theory should have eliminated hub doubling altogether, yet instead seemed to give rise to a strange hybrid era of errors, where transitional dies, incomplete hardening, and improper hub alignments created a perfect storm for overlooked anomalies. And yet not every anomaly can be explained by process changes alone, as evidenced by at least 3 documented 1998 cents. that exhibit a faint doubling of the memorial building on the reverse, an error not typically associated with that year, or that design, yet found in specimens so clean and so uniform in strike that they defied dismissal. And as numismatists dug deeper, rumors began to swirl about an internal design committee that briefly debated moving to the closed AM reverse sooner than scheduled. Perhaps even authorizing test dies that were later shelved, only to be mistakenly activated or deliberately released by someone inside the mint. And while no direct evidence has surfaced to confirm this, several off-the-record interviews and FOIA requests point to inconsistencies in die tracking procedures and record-keeping lapses between June and August of 1998, including one batch of die shipment logs with inexplicably duplicated serial numbers, hinting at the possible use of duplicate dies outside official oversight. And as all of this unfolds, the collector world continues to pulse with obsession, chasing not just the closed AM but every tiny variation: coins with rotated reverses, coins with what seem to be traces of extra columns between the memorial steps, coins with mismatched die rotation angles, and even more disturbing, coins with nearly invisible overlays behind the word Liberty that look under intense magnification like the residue of a previous strike. A theory that would suggest multi-strike or improper planchet reuse, a practice the mint vehemently denies using at the time. And yet here they are, physical, documentable, in the hands of collectors and researchers who now believe that the 1998 Lincoln penny may be far more than a simple close AM oddity. It may be the key to uncovering a hidden chapter of mint experimentation, or even quiet internal sabotage, carried out not for profit, but as a cryptic protest or as an unnoticed byproduct of bureaucratic chaos during a year of major technological transition. And the mystery deepens with every new discovery, every unexplained coin pulled from a forgotten roll, every specimen that shows just enough irregularity to challenge official narratives. And behind it all looms one pressing question: how could so many unusual coins escape unnoticed from one of the most secure, monitored, and automated production facilities in the country, unless the very nature of that system was flawed? Or someone within it exploited a loophole no one else saw, and if so, how many more 1998 Lincoln pennies are out there still hidden, still waiting, still whispering the silent story of a production event that was never supposed to happen, a chapter the mint won't confirm and the records can't explain, and yet the coins persist, passing from hand to hand, daring the next collector to look closer, to peel back the veil, to ask again, what if this wasn't a mistake at all, but a message left behind in copper and zinc, a puzzle with no map, no ending, and only one entry point: the 1998 Lincoln cent, the ordinary coin with the extraordinary secret. Next, 2007 D1 cent coin. Today we plunge into one of the most obscure and confounding numismatic mysteries ever to slip past the steel jaws of the U.S. Mint, a case so strange, so deeply buried in routine that it almost escaped unnoticed, yet it begins with one of the most familiar objects in American daily life, the 2007 D Lincoln penny. A coin so deceptively ordinary that its secrets have only emerged through obsessive scrutiny, quiet discoveries, and whispers traded in hushed tones by collectors who know what they saw but still can't fully explain it, because what if a small mistake, a barely perceptible error buried in copper-plated zinc, made it one of the rarest coins ever struck, a rogue artifact that wasn't supposed to exist, forged in the mechanical heart of the Denver Mint at a time when error coins were supposedly a thing of the past. Extinct in an age of laser-guided production lines and automated quality control systems that had rendered most traditional mistakes obsolete, and yet here lies the 2007 D penny, wrapped in anomalies that defy logic, historical context, and even the Mint's own production standards, drawing a line straight through bureaucratic oversight, mechanical failure, and the enduring question of what else may have slipped through unnoticed, for this was a year of transition, a quiet prelude to the monumental redesigns of 2009. And yet buried in the production runs of 2007 is a coin that doesn't behave like the others, coins that exhibit details so inconsistent with official specifications that even seasoned graders hesitated to authenticate them at first glance. Lincoln bust slightly skewed off-center, odd planchet striations across the reverse, and mint marks so faint, so improperly placed, or strangely shaped, that they triggered speculation that old, outdated hand punch techniques had somehow resurfaced in an era supposedly ruled by die consistency. A suspicion that only deepened when collectors began to uncover more 2007 pennies. With doubling in unexpected locations, not the usual places, but ghost-like doubling in the words, "In God We Trust," or strange doubling along Lincoln's neckline, evidence of either a rare form of hub doubling or the more unsettling possibility of a press calibration issue that went undetected for days, or even weeks, during live production. And though the Mint has never acknowledged such a lapse, internal reports from late 2007 mention an unscheduled die replacement operation and briefly reference abnormal reverse deformation, a phrase as cryptic as it is damning when one considers that multiple 2007 specimens have surfaced with reverse details either flattened, shadowed, or oddly shifted, as though struck under irregular pressure or on misaligned planchets, some of which display composition blisters beneath the copper plating, hinting at potential planchet contamination or alloy inconsistencies. A theory reinforced by metallurgical analyses showing inconsistent zinc layering in samples taken from coins pulled from separate regions of the country, all minted within the same narrow production window, and as more were found, patterns began to emerge, coins that bore die cracks stretching from Lincoln's shoulder to the rim, coins with split serifs in the L of Liberty, and even coins whose fields seemed unnaturally smooth or brushed, as if they'd been lightly polished before striking, an impossible outcome unless somehow already worn planchets were recycled into production or a cleaning protocol went awry in the preparation line, and when you consider the number of coins affected, their near identical wear patterns, and their geographic dispersal, what once looked like isolated cases now resembles a coordinated error event, either triggered by a cascading mechanical fault or, as some collectors suspect, an unauthorized or experimental production run that was either terminated early or deliberately covered up, and this theory isn't without precedent. Especially when one considers that the Mint has a long history of secret die trials, experimental alloys, and unreleased test strikes, some of which are only acknowledged years, or decades, later, often under public pressure or accidental disclosure through FOIA requests, and indeed, a 2013 internal document revealed that certain press logs from 2007 were redacted under confidential operational concerns, sparking rumors that a prototype reverse design may have been trialed at the Denver Mint. Ahead of the bicentennial redesigns, with a few specimens accidentally making it into the general mintage, which could explain the odd design anomalies spotted in the Lincoln Memorial, subtle spacing errors between the columns, misaligned steps, or a distorted base beneath the statue, seen only under high magnification and easily missed by casual inspection. Yet consistent enough to raise serious doubts about whether these coins were struck using standard reverse dies at all, and if not, then what were they, and why was their existence never acknowledged? And further muddying the waters are coins discovered with partially missing designer initials, or in some cases, no initials at all, an error once common in earlier decades but supposedly eliminated in the 1990s with tighter die preparation protocols, yet inexplicably resurfacing on a number of 2007 specimens, some of which also show faint understrike marks, ghostly remnants of earlier images faintly visible beneath the surface as if the coin had been struck over an improperly wiped planchet or a previously rejected strike, an error nearly impossible under standard procedure, unless a die was reused or a blank improperly recycled into the press line. And then there's the most bizarre variation of all, coins where the mint mark appears almost to float, its anchoring depressed and off-axis, suggesting a die sink that failed during the hubbing process, or worse, a rogue mint mark placement die used outside official procedure. A claim bolstered by a retired mint technician who anonymously told a numismatic publication that late 2007 saw an internal audit at the Denver facility regarding non-uniform die performance, though no further explanation was offered. And if even half of that is true, it would mean that the 2007 penny, far from being a standard, postmodern cent, is actually a remnant of a chaotic, undocumented production period, an era when quiet changes, technological experimentation, and staffing transitions may have converged to create a perfect storm of unnoticed errors and systemic vulnerabilities, leaving behind a handful of flawed coins that are only now being pieced together into a pattern by relentless collectors, those who've spent years scouring bank rolls, online auctions, estate sales, and pocket change, searching for that one telltale sign, the tilted mint mark, the ghosted field, the missing initials. The misaligned devices, that marks a 2007 penny as part of the mystery. And what's more chilling is that for every confirmed specimen, there are likely dozens more hiding in circulation, their secrets unseen, waiting to be recognized, passed from hand to hand as mere cents while carrying within them the unresolved story of a minting error so systemic and so quietly buried that even now, most of the numismatic world remains unaware of its scale, and every new find raises deeper questions. How did these anomalies bypass modern quality control? What else has been hidden or quietly removed from official documentation? And could the 2007 penny be the last great undiscovered error series of the digital minting age, a relic of oversight in a system designed to be foolproof, a coin that refuses to conform, that whispers secrets through its doubled edges, its shadowed impressions, its misshapen fields, and its impossible inconsistencies? Drawing us deeper into a world where obsession meets history, where the most innocent object, a common penny, becomes a cipher for lost records, hidden trials, and a treasure hunt that may not end until every 2007 Lincoln cent in America has been turned over, examined, and interrogated for the truth it might still be hiding. Next, 1993 1-cent coin. Today we peel back the tarnished surface of one of the most mystifying stories in the history of U.S. coinage, a story not etched in gold or silver, but pressed into the modest copper-plated zinc of a single 1-cent piece, the 1993 Lincoln penny, a coin struck in the wake of an era that should have eliminated minting errors entirely. And yet this unassuming cent has come to embody one of the strangest, most hotly debated enigmas to ever haunt collectors and experts alike. Because what if a small mistake, a fleeting lapse in production protocol, a misfiled die, a hurried decision buried under bureaucratic fog, transformed a coin intended to be ordinary into one of the rarest and most controversial pieces ever to circulate? And what if this wasn't just a mistake, but a glimpse into something deeper, something systemic, a rupture in the machinery of a mint known for its discipline and silence? For the 1993 Lincoln cent should have been entirely unremarkable, minted in massive numbers during a year when modernized technology had seemingly perfected the minting process. But soon, collectors began to notice oddities, tiny, often overlooked at first, but uncanny in their frequency and nature, coins with faint ghost images, shadowed lettering, devices that seemed to double and blur as if caught mid-transformation, mint marks either missing or strangely malformed. Some misaligned at angles inconsistent with the mechanical presses used at the time, others appearing smaller or off-center as though they had been punched by hand long after that method was supposedly retired. And then there were the even stranger variations, coins that bore hints of a different reverse altogether, specimens where spacing between the letters in America seemed narrower than expected, where columns of the memorial appeared thicker or misaligned, and where the usual fine detail of Lincoln's profile appeared unusually soft or distorted, not from wear, but from something else. Something that hinted at flawed die production or experimental design implementation, a theory that gained traction when two distinct varieties of the 1993 penny were documented with significant die clashes, visible under magnification, showing not just doubling, but entire elements partially mirrored across the fields in ghostly, almost spectral impressions, including outlines of letters and architectural elements mispositioned by degrees that defied conventional die misalignment patterns. And as more of these specimens began to surface, often from the same regions in the Midwest or Southern California, rumors swirled that these weren't just production flaws, but remnants of something bigger, something the mint never intended for the public to see. And that's when the theories began to spiral into obsession, whispers of lost die trials from the early 1990s. When the mint was quietly experimenting with new hubbing processes, transitioning between double and single squeeze methods, introducing changes that many assumed had gone unnoticed, yet now seemed to have left behind a breadcrumb trail in the form of flawed cents, specimens that bore hallmarks of transitional stress, of improper alignment, of testing gone wrong or abandoned halfway. perhaps under pressure to meet quotas or cover up an unexpected outcome. And hidden in those scattered reports were mentions of coins struck on improperly prepared planchets, blanks that were either too thin, too thick, or even mismatched. Entirely in composition, some showing unusual colorations under spectrographic analysis, indicating contamination or substitution from foreign stocked material, a practice not unheard of when the mint scrambled to meet demand during supply chain gaps, and suddenly the 1993 penny was no longer just a coin, but a mystery anchored in questions the mint refused to answer. Why were so many oddities emerging from a year that should have been one of the most consistent in production history? Why did internal reports from that period include phrases like unexplained machine recalibrations and unauthorized die retention? And why were there no formal responses to collector-submitted error specimens that clearly exhibited design features not officially in use until years later, including what appeared to be reverse field traits similar to the later AM configuration, a shift that wasn't supposed to begin until 1998, yet seemed to cast its shadow backward into 1993, as if someone had gotten ahead of schedule or inserted a prototype die into circulation as a test, or by mistake, and made no record of it. And then came the truly chilling part, coins that bore not only physical anomalies but chronological ones, as in the now legendary Phantom Strike cases, where certain 1993 Lincoln cents under extremely specific lighting and magnification appeared to carry remnants of date digits inconsistent with 1993, as though a previously used die had not been fully erased before reuse, or, worse, as if the die had been improperly repurposed from a prior experimental strike, something that could only happen under extraordinary oversight or complete negligence. And when one such coin surfaced at a numismatics show in 2008 and was examined by 3 independent experts, each confirming the anomaly but disagreeing entirely on its cause, the result was not resolution, but deeper confusion. And with it came a flood of speculation. Was the 1993 Lincoln penny a case of widespread error, the result of a supply chain or die management breakdown, or was it a limited but deeply significant breach in protocol, an instance where test equipment, experimental dies, or improperly destroyed prototypes were shuffled into live production, left to vanish in circulation like any ordinary cent? And if that's true, then how many of these ghost coins remain out there, hiding in change jars, forgotten coin rolls, dusty bank bags, their secrets unnoticed, their subtle differences waiting to be seen by the right eyes? Because what started as a trickle of error reports has over the years swelled into a torrent of findings, each slightly different, each hinting at an unresolved narrative that cannot be dismissed as coincidence or isolated blunder. And as the timeline of the U.S. Mint's internal operations in the early 90s is re-examined by both historians and die specialists, an unsettling pattern emerges. Overlapping transition phases, incomplete documentation, sudden procedural shifts, and, in one especially troubling memo from a former mint metallurgist, an offhand reference to pre-approved hub testings in 1993. That was never followed up or included in official summaries, as if the matter was not just forgotten, but buried. And it is in this fog of half-truths and missing data that the story of the 1993 penny takes root, not as a single mistake, but as a symbol of systemic vulnerability, a crack in the armor of an institution known for precision. And as more of these coins are pulled from obscurity, the obsession grows, not just among collectors, but among those drawn to the thrill of uncovering what was never meant to be found, who see in every doubled die, every missing initial, every off-center strike and unexplained shadow the possibility that this coin, this 1-cent piece from 1993, is a messenger from inside a machine whose secrets were never meant to escape. A copper-clad confession of something deeper and unresolved. And so the hunt continues, relentless and unending, because if even one of these theories proves true, if even one of these errors can be traced back to a forgotten die trial or a rogue test run, then everything we thought we knew about the stability and certainty of U.S. Mint operations is shaken, and the 1993 Lincoln penny becomes not just an artifact, but a key to a numismatic labyrinth that may yet hold more secrets in its worn edges and imperfect fields than we've ever dared to imagine. Next, 2006 1-cent coin. Today's journey begins with a mystery buried in the heart of American coinage. A riddle of metal and mint that has haunted collectors, confounded experts, and captivated the numismatic world since 2006. What if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? What if a coin you passed over without a second glance holds secrets that have never been fully explained, its story etched not just in copper-plated zinc but in layers of bureaucratic silence, production chaos, and whispered obsessions? In 2006, a seemingly ordinary Lincoln penny entered circulation, bearing the familiar visage of the 16th president and the memorial reverse we'd come to expect. Yet somewhere in the thundering machinery of the U.S. Mint, something went inexplicably wrong. Coins began surfacing with ghost-like impressions, design anomalies that defied categorization, shadowed lettering as if struck by a phantom die, floating mint marks that didn't correspond to any known issue, and even bizarre die clashes where the obverse and reverse seemed to have collided in a mechanical ballet no technician could explain. Some had doubling so subtle it appeared only under intense magnification. Others had it so pronounced it looked like two worlds overlapped. But the true mystery wasn't just in the physical coin, it was in what wasn't there. Initials vanished from their rightful place. Die gouges appeared where none should be. Reverse images bore faint outlines of devices that were never part of the 2006 design. Collectors whispered of planchets too thin, edges too sharp, a metallic resonance unlike any penny before or since. And still, the mint remained silent. No press release. No explanation. Just a deepening silence that only fueled more speculation. Was this the result of an experimental die trial that escaped into the wild? An unofficial test run from a new minting facility kept off the books? Or something far stranger, an intentional obfuscation of an error that revealed too much about the mint's inner workings? As reports poured in from opposite corners of the country, each more chilling than the last, stories emerged of government collectors showing up at coin shops unannounced, asking too many questions, buying up specimens and then disappearing. One numismatist claimed to find a penny with misaligned strikes that placed Lincoln's profile almost entirely outside the coin's rim, while another described a specimen that, under ultraviolet light, revealed faint secondary impressions of a reverse never issued. Why would the mint allow this to happen in a year with no major redesigns, no commemorative disruptions, no declared die shifts? Was this chaos, or cover-up? And why do some of the most anomalous examples appear to carry micro-engraved patterns that match no known mint equipment from 2006? As the community delved deeper, long-forgotten reports surfaced, confidential memos warning of irregularities in die usage, lost shipment manifests of blank planchets never officially received, and unexplained work orders for coinage that supposedly didn't exist. Theories turned darker. Was this the result of a rogue engraver testing unseen designs? An automated error allowed to run unchecked through night shifts with minimal oversight? Or an intentional deviation buried beneath layers of procedural compliance? Every new coin discovered raises more questions. How many are out there? Have we found them all, or is the most revealing piece still sitting in someone's pocket, unrecognized? And why do the inconsistencies often appear in coins struck at the Denver Mint, long known for high-volume output, but rarely linked to major anomalies, unless, of course, they weren't all struck there? Expert analysis only deepened the mystery. High-speed photography showing micro-bubbling under the plating, suggesting uneven pressure applications. Scanning electron microscopes revealing faint, unexplainable subsurface die marks. Metallurgical testing hinting at impurities inconsistent with the 2006 penny standard. Even the coin's acoustic signature, a subtle ring when dropped, appears altered in the most anomalous examples, as if they resonate with the weight of something hidden. Some collectors have devoted decades to chasing down every known variant, mapping patterns across states and dates, even building private databases of photographic evidence, hoping to decode a production pattern that defies logic. One man claimed he traced an entire roll of strange 2006 cents to a regional bank in Ohio that mysteriously shuttered weeks later. Another woman discovered a batch with slightly warped edges, as if the coins had been exposed to uneven heat during striking, except the mint denies any furnace malfunction that year. Then there are the urban legends: a janitor who claims he saw pallets of rejected coins being loaded onto unmarked trucks, a technician who vanished after filing a formal report of unauthorized reverse impressions, a former Mint employee who left a cryptic online post before deleting his account forever, hinting that not all 2006 pennies are from this timeline. Whether myth or truth, the coin continues to draw seekers, sparking an obsession that goes far beyond numismatics. This is no longer about sense, but secrets. Each anomaly is a breadcrumb on a trail that leads deeper into the labyrinth of federal production, human error, and perhaps intentional misdirection. What else has the Mint hidden? How many coins were destroyed? How many survived by accident or design? And how close have we come to uncovering a version of history that was never meant to be told, recorded not in documents or reports, but in the surface flaws of a single, mysterious cent from 2006? Keep watching as we peel back each layer, because the deeper we go, the more the mystery grows, and the question remains: is the most extraordinary coin in American history still out there, hiding in plain sight? Next, 2004 1-cent coin. Today we plunge headfirst into one of the most mystifying, unsettling, and electrifying stories ever whispered in the shadows of American numismatics. A story that begins with a seemingly ordinary 2004 Lincoln penny, a coin millions held and discarded without a second glance, but one that, beneath its familiar copper facade, may harbor secrets that have eluded the most seasoned experts and ignited a firestorm of obsession in the hearts of those determined to expose its truth. Because what if a small mistake made it one of the rarest coins ever struck? What if that error wasn't a mistake at all, but a cryptic signal lost in the chaos of minting operations and bureaucratic oversight? In 2004, a year with no scheduled redesigns or commemoratives for the cent, a number of enigmatic coins quietly slipped into circulation, pennies that, to the naked eye, looked typical, yet upon closer inspection revealed bizarre anomalies that defied every standard of mint protocol, misaligned strikes that left Lincoln's face floating unnervingly close to the coin's rim, doubling on the date that seemed to blur time itself, and reverse designs marked by ghost-like impressions, like faint echoes of an abandoned die, as though the coin were trying to remember something it had once been. Some coins bore no visible mint mark at all, raising urgent questions about their origin. Were they struck at a facility that should not have produced them, or were these remnants of a secret trial run, intended to vanish into destruction but saved by chance or design? Other specimens bore what collectors began to call phantom mint marks, tiny disjointed symbols that matched no official designation, appearing beneath magnification like coded messages. Then came the whispers: coins where the designer's initials, VDB, were entirely missing, or worse, warped into jagged, indecipherable lines, and reverse memorials that seemed slightly off-center or subtly deformed, as if stamped by a die that had seen too much or wasn't meant to exist. Some pennies rang at a higher pitch when dropped, hinting at planchets that weren't entirely copper-plated zinc, igniting theories of wrong stock blanks or clandestine testing runs using forgotten alloys. The most confounding discoveries came from collectors who claimed to have found coins with reverse die clashes, where Lincoln's profile was faintly visible, ghost-like, on the reverse, suggesting a violent mechanical error at a stage of minting so early and so critical, it should have triggered immediate recalls. Yet nothing was ever recalled. No statement was issued. No internal memo ever surfaced to explain how such errors could have bypassed the famously rigorous quality control of the U.S. Mint. Was this gross oversight or something more deliberate, an experiment, a cover-up, or an attempt to quietly bury something that should never have reached the public? And the deeper collectors dug, the more sinister the mystery became. One researcher unearthed archived production logs from the Philadelphia Mint showing an unexplained surplus of blank cent planchets that were never officially struck. Another stumbled upon a late-night shipping report indicating an entire batch of 2004 dies had been destroyed and replaced under emergency protocol, without explanation. Then there were the tales from retired Mint employees, anonymous, jittery voices on coin forums, who spoke of unauthorized shifts, misprinted inspection forms, and test coins that were never meant to leave the facility. As the anomalies grew in number, the community response mutated from fascination into obsession. Collectors began hoarding 2004 cents by the thousands, setting up microscopes, running metallurgical tests, comparing die states and alignment angles, convinced that a code was hidden in the flaws, a map leading to a deeper truth. Some claimed to find coins struck on foreign planchets, possibly left over from international minting contracts. Others pointed to microscopic die gouges in the fields of the coin, unusually consistent across different examples, almost like fingerprints left behind by an unseen hand. Theories spiraled. Was the 2004 penny part of a classified production error stemming from an internal dispute between mint facilities? Were the abnormalities the remnants of a scrap design, accidentally reused in a shift-change mix-up? Or was it something more elaborate, a covert experiment in anti-counterfeiting tech, quietly shelved and accidentally released? One thing was certain: the anomalies weren't isolated. Across the country, from small-town coin shops to high-level numismatic archives, more and more examples emerged, each carrying its own oddities, its own clues. One man claimed his coin revealed a faint secondary memorial structure beneath the main reverse, like a double exposure in photography, hinting at a double strike by two different dies. Another collector sent in a coin to be graded, only to receive it back with a vague note. Inconclusive. Unknown origin. That single phrase sent the online coin community into a frenzy. What did it mean, unknown origin? Theories intensified. Some pointed to an experimental die set manufactured off-site under contract, later misdelivered. Others believed the era coins were part of a shadow batch produced as a response to a feared Y2K disruption still echoing into 2004. But the most disturbing question remained: how did so many of these coins escape detection? Were mint employees bribed, coerced, or merely unaware of what they were producing? Were these coins inserted into circulation intentionally, as a quiet rebellion, or as test balloons for changes never meant to be public? Every attempt to clarify only uncovered new layers of uncertainty. A FOIA request filed by a numismatics researcher returned heavily redacted documents referencing unauthorized die retention and unscheduled production anomalies. When pressed, the mint issued only a terse, one-line statement. The 2004 1-cent coin meets all production and legal specifications. And yet the evidence, physical, photographic, metallurgical, says otherwise. The anomalies aren't fiction, they're real, and growing. Even now, collectors continue to report odd finds: coins with unusually thick rims, reverse details slightly rotated, shadow images where none should exist. Some describe coins that, under extreme lighting, reveal what appears to be a faint second date, a 2003 ghost print underlying the 2004 strike. Could these be transitional errors, where outdated dies were hastily retooled? Or did the mint simply lose track of what was being used on which press? As the obsession deepens, so does the community's resolve. Private databases are expanding, tracking minute differences in known anomalies, linking coins by striking pressure, die state, and even the grain structure of the planchet. Every coin is a puzzle piece, every flaw a breadcrumb. And in this slow-motion treasure hunt, the ultimate question grows ever louder: have we seen the most extreme anomaly yet, or is the rarest 2004 penny still waiting to be found, in a forgotten roll at the back of a drawer, in the cash register of a gas station, or among the pennies jingling at the bottom of someone's jar? This isn't just the story of a flawed coin, it's a chronicle of human error, institutional mystery, and relentless pursuit. Every fingerprint, every shadowed letter, every inexplicable die clash is a signpost pointing toward a truth buried beneath layers of copper and silence. Keep watching, because the hunt is far from over, and the rarest, strangest, and most forbidden penny of 2004 might be closer than anyone dares to believe. Next, 1995 D 1-cent coin. Today we plunge into one of the most chilling mysteries in American numismatics, a coin that should have been ordinary, forgotten, another copper-clad footnote in the billions churned out by the U.S. Mint, but instead emerged as a haunting anomaly that has defied logic, protocol, and historical record since the moment it was struck, the 1995 D Lincoln penny. What if a small, almost imperceptible minting mistake transformed a common cent into a legendary enigma? What if a momentary lapse in machinery, or something far stranger, unleashed one of the rarest, most misunderstood coins ever to slip through the mint's fingers? Beneath its dull, everyday exterior lies a chaotic symphony of anomalies so bizarre they've ignited whispered debates among collectors, stunned experts into silence, and spawned decades-long obsessions among those lucky, or cursed, enough to find one. It begins with a simple D mint mark, supposedly denoting Denver, but on some examples that mark fades into ghost-like obscurity, appears doubled in ways that don't match any known die pairing, or exhibits a slant and curvature inconsistent with minting protocols of the era, as though it came from a phantom press. Witnesses described shadowed devices around Lincoln's bust, doubled eyelids that vanish under certain lighting, floating letters near Liberty, or eerie rim distortions that mimic the results of off-center strikes yet rest perfectly centered to the naked eye. Then there are the whispers of coins with no initials beneath Lincoln's shoulder, of die clashes so violent that mirrored impressions of wheat stalks, long abandoned since 1958, briefly appeared in the fields, of specimens with reverse lettering so sharp and deep it suggests restriking, yet no official records confirm such an event. How did these coins escape the mint's rigid inspections? Why did confidential internal memos, obtained years later through numismatic leaks, reference unexplained strike variations in late winter 1995, and why did a veteran mint employee describe unauthorized die experimentation that occurred during an unrecorded graveyard shift? Collectors have reported finding coins with abrupt planchet seams, as if the metal composition had been fused from two distinct sources, and others exhibiting a chilling mirror-like doubling that lacks any of the conventional markers of a doubled die obverse, leaving experts puzzled, unable to trace the error to any known class of doubling. And then there's the so-called vanishing Lincoln, a handful of circulated coins in which Lincoln's profile appears smeared or vanishes under magnification, a phenomenon some theorize is caused by undocumented grease-filled dies, while others believe it indicates a deeper, more clandestine die experiment that was never greenlit through official channels. Each tale deepens the enigma, as retired engravers speak in hushed tones about test dies they thought were destroyed, about reworked dies for a rumored bicentennial project scrapped at the last minute, and about pallets of questionable coins said to have been quietly melted down without report. Meanwhile, obsessed collectors continue to trade grainy photos, microscope footage, and whispered leads across forums and private meetings, each pursuing a theory more tangled than the last. Was the 1995 descent part of a botched transitional strike between compositional standards? Did an experimental hub briefly enter rotation before being pulled in a frantic cover-up? Or are these errors the fingerprint of an unauthorized hand at work, someone inside the mint who pushed the boundaries of protocol just far enough to create a silent legacy? The deeper you go, the more impossible it seems that this was an accident. Too many inconsistencies align too perfectly. Too many errors defy known classifications, overlapping symptoms that shouldn't occur on the same coin, a doubled mint mark and a misaligned die and a planchet lamination, all on one piece of copper-clad mystery. It's a puzzle with too many pieces and no picture to guide the way, a coin so shrouded in speculation that it's become a kind of numismatic Rosetta Stone, each new discovery potentially unlocking a long-buried truth about what really happened inside the Denver Mint that fateful year. Are these fragments of a scrapped proof trial? The dying breaths of a secret test run? Or something far more deliberate, a message, encoded in metal, from someone who wanted their mark to live on? As we sift through the eyewitness accounts, dissect expert reports, and unbox the personal stories of those who stumbled upon 1995 anomalies that shouldn't exist, coins that shine oddly under UV light, that trigger non-ferrous alarms, that seem to age at a rate different from other cents, we find ourselves descending into a collector's fever dream where treasure isn't measured in dollar signs, but in the pulse-racing thrill of uncovering something forbidden, something overlooked, something lost, and waiting to be found. And if these coins exist, if they slipped into circulation unnoticed, bypassed the bureaucratic firewall of mint oversight, then what else might still be out there, hiding in pocket change, waiting to be seen with the right eyes, under the right light, by someone who knows what to look for? Stay with us, because the story of the 1995 D. Lincoln penny is just beginning, and the final chapter may still be waiting in your own coin jar. Next, 1983 D 1-cent coin. Today we uncover a mystery so deeply embedded in the annals of American numismatics that even seasoned collectors struggle to separate fact from legend. The 1983 D. Lincoln cent, a coin struck in a year of silent upheaval, carrying with it the weight of anomalies so inexplicable, so entangled in secrecy, and so riddled with conflicting expert opinions that it has become one of the most whispered about enigmas in the history of U.S. coinage. And the deeper you dig, the more chilling the story becomes. What if a small, seemingly routine production decision in the summer of 1983 made this penny one of the rarest, most anomalous coins ever to escape the Denver Mint, a coin forged at the intersection of experimental metallurgy, rushed policy changes, and the uncontrolled chaos of minting machinery pushed beyond its limits during a time when the U.S. Mint was quietly grappling with a crisis it refused to publicly admit? This was the year after the Mint had abruptly shifted from solid bronze to a cheaper zinc core with a thin copper plating, a transition meant to curb costs but fraught with logistical nightmares, metal inconsistencies, and unknown long-term effects. And in the midst of this fragile changeover, a flood of reports began to surface. Collectors and bank tellers encountering pennies that didn't sound right when dropped, that weighed too much or too little, that bore sharp yet distorted designs. Coins with ghostly Lincoln busts, reverse features so subtly doubled they appeared to shimmer under magnification, coins that defied every known classification of mint error, spawning rumors of a rogue die, a misaligned hub, or even secret die trials never meant to see daylight. And central to this enigma was the 1983 D cent. Often overlooked yet frequently surfacing in private collections with features that didn't match Denver production records. Why did some bear a thickness uncharacteristic of the new zinc copper blend? Why did others appear struck with more force than standard pressure would allow, leaving deep impressions near the date and shadowed echoes behind Lincoln's shoulder? And why do reports persist of coins where the D mint mark is misaligned or appears altered, as though repunched or struck by an unauthorized hand using a die never recorded in mint logs? Some specimens display clear signs of die clashes, eerie outlines of reverse features bleeding through the obverse field, suggesting dies were operated without a planchet in place, an error the Mint insists was impossible given the automated safety systems active at the time. Yet the evidence is too widespread to ignore, and when magnified under digital microscopes, several known examples reveal microstriation patterns and plating inconsistencies that suggest a failed bonding between core and coating, as if the very fabric of the coin was unstable at the atomic level, raising questions not just about the errors visible to the eye, but about the unseen experiments in metallurgy possibly conducted under classified budget codes or regional testing initiatives long buried in bureaucratic archives. And then there are the invisible initials. Specimens in which the engraver's signature vanishes entirely beneath the shoulder or appears so faint it seems erased by time itself, despite otherwise clear, uncirculated detail, igniting theories of modified master dies, incomplete hubbing cycles, or even the repurposing of rejected experimental dies during high-pressure production runs, possibly to meet quotas following supply chain disruptions in the wake of the metal transition. And yet, for all these anomalies, the U.S. Mint has never issued a formal acknowledgement of any major error regarding the 1983 D cent, prompting conspiracy theories, whispered collector accounts of confiscated coins, and reports of confidential memos between regional mints suggesting production irregularities that required immediate die destruction and off-the-record coin meltings. So how did these flawed coins survive? Who let them escape? And why do so many carry almost identical imperfections if they were truly random? Was there a moment, just one shift, 1 hour, one overlooked tray, when something went terribly wrong in the Denver facility, and no one was allowed to speak of it? And why do some experts believe the 1983 D may have been caught in a hub transition error between the old bronze-compatible dies and the new zinc-optimized ones, creating a hybrid striking event that left behind features from both metal eras, features that no single classification can contain, leading to coins with odd collar marks, partially missing design elements, and legends with variable depths? sometimes tapering mid-letter as though struck on a slope or rolling die face. But perhaps most chilling of all are the stories from those who claim to have found coins that hum faintly under magnetism tests, that spark slightly under current flow, that hold trace elements of bronze alloys not used since 1982, sparking whispers of leftover planchets being struck accidentally, or perhaps not accidentally, on newly configured presses, creating an untraceable subseries of transitional errors with no official acknowledgement and no precedent in mint release data. And as more of these bizarre outliers surface, in estate collections, in random coin rolls, even in overseas finds, the obsession only deepens. Are we witnessing the fragments of a failed metallurgical experiment, a rogue mint employee's final act of rebellion, or the unintended consequences of a poorly implemented system-wide shift that permanently altered the course of American coinage history? With the 1983 descent as its most damning artifact? And what about the design inconsistencies? The oddly raised rims on some pieces, the concave depressions where fields should be flat, the bizarre ghosts doubling around. In God we trust. That seems to twist the letters into slight curls, almost like fingerprints etched into metal, hinting at a human presence behind the flaw, deliberate, careful, or perhaps panicked, trying to erase a mistake before it could spread, yet failing to catch every piece? Why have known examples been pulled from circulation, only to vanish again into private hands or be locked in long-term holdings by collectors who refuse to publish their findings for fear of scrutiny? And why do some seasoned numismatists openly suggest that a subset of 1983 descents may have come from a previously unknown die variety, one never catalogued? One potentially linked to rejected prototype designs or die trials intended for alternate compositional testing during the early 80s, when inflation pressures pushed the mint into desperate innovations kept tightly under wraps? Could these be remnants of a covert testing program run through Denver as a contingency measure, a scenario in which undocumented dies were approved for a limited run under temporary authorization, later retracted and erased from the mint's official history, yet inadvertently distributed before the recall could be enforced? And if so, what else was hidden? What other anomalies lie dormant in pockets and drawers, in jars of change and forgotten coin rolls, waiting to be rediscovered, their secrets still embedded in copper, zinc, and silence? The 1983 descent has become more than just a coin, it's a cipher, a trigger, a relic of uncertainty in an era of transition, and each new discovery adds another layer to a mystery that has resisted resolution for over 4 decades, its clues scattered across the country like pieces of a puzzle too dangerous to complete, and as collectors grow bolder, exchanging theories, scanning every detail under ever more advanced magnification, one truth becomes increasingly undeniable. The story of the 1983 delinquent is far from over, and the most extraordinary revelations may still be waiting, unrecognized, in the change sitting silently at the bottom of your pocket. Next, 2017 D1 cent coin. Today we unravel one of the most recent, and yet most confounding mysteries in modern numismatics, a story that begins with a single, seemingly ordinary coin minted in an era dominated by automation, precision, and rigorous quality control, yet which somehow escaped all detection to become one of the most perplexing enigmas ever to emerge from the U.S. Mint. The 2017 delinquent cent, a coin that, on the surface, should be utterly forgettable, mass-produced by the billions during a time of high-tech oversight, but which has now taken on a mythic status among collectors due to an increasingly bizarre trail of anomalies, whispered secrets, and unexplained production events that continue to baffle experts and fuel speculation that something far more complex may have happened deep within the Denver Mint in that fateful year. What if a tiny error, unnoticed by even the most advanced inspection systems, triggered a cascade of flaws that spiraled into the creation of a coin so peculiar, so rich in contradictions, that it defies all known classifications of mint error, and in doing so, reveals a shadowy side to minting operations, one where protocol fractures, accountability evaporates, and unauthorized events are quietly swept away before the public ever sees the evidence? Reports began innocently enough, collectors finding coins with strange doubling around the date and the word liberty, a type of distortion that didn't conform to traditional hub doubling but instead suggested either mechanical doubling at a scale inconsistent with normal die chatter or the possibility of a rogue die being rotated or misaligned during a high-speed run. Perhaps during a late-night shift when oversight thinned and throughput was prioritized over precision, and then more surfaced. Pennies where the mint mark, D, was elongated or faint, offset just slightly enough to provoke suspicion, with some appearing raised higher than others and several presenting as almost ghostly, half fused into the field as though the die had been improperly polished or tampered with before striking, a detail small enough to miss during casual inspection but impossible to ignore for trained eyes. And as these irregularities accumulated, the questions multiplied. How did these coins bypass multi-stage laser scanning systems designed specifically to catch anomalies down to the micron? Why did multiple independent collectors across the country report finding 2017 D specimens with shadow impressions, ghost-like outlines behind Lincoln's portrait, as though a previous strike had partially imprinted a now-lost design, leaving behind faint remnants of something the mint has never publicly acknowledged? Some even claimed to find pieces bearing signs of die clash so severe that reverse features appeared on the obverse and subtle but chilling detail, an inverted shield outline where Lincoln's chest should be, traces of 1 cent, echoing just beneath the lower jaw, effects that shouldn't be possible unless two dies had struck each other without a planchet between them. And yet the official 2017 D Mint production report contains no incident logs, no errors reported, no corrective actions documented. Nothing to indicate that such a catastrophic mishap ever took place, which only deepened the mystery and pushed obsessed numismatists further into speculation about covert die testing, prototype striking trials, and the possibility that a previously unknown design was quietly developed, struck, and then abandoned in a rush. With only a few unintended survivors released into circulation before the plan was scrapped and the dies were destroyed. And still the oddities multiplied. Some 2017 D cents emerged bearing sharply raised devices but inconsistent edge pressure, rim thickness that varied within the same coin, and microscopic splits in the copper plating that revealed planchets inconsistent with known zinc core specifications, with trace elements of nickel or tin appearing in laboratory tests. Metals not used in standard cent composition for decades, prompting theories that these coins were struck on leftover or experimental blanks, intended for other denominations or foreign contracts, slipped in by mistake, or by design, during a night shift when a misfeed was ignored or a production experiment went too far. But what are we to make of the coins with no visible engraver initials at all, the subtle VDB signature beneath Lincoln's shoulder completely missing or replaced by barely legible marks that look more like scratches than engraved letters? Could this point to faulty die preparation, or is it evidence that different design hubs were used, perhaps altered versions never intended for public release? And if so, who authorized their use and why has no one come forward to claim responsibility? Even more confounding are the whispered sightings of 2017 D specimens with mirrored fields and frosted devices, details reminiscent of proof coins, though no proof cents were struck at the Denver Mint that year, which officially does not handle proof coinage, raising the unsettling question of whether unauthorized proofs were struck using experimental dies, perhaps in response to a cancelled commemorative program or for internal testing purposes, and later slipped into circulation before they could be quarantined. The more collectors searched, the more they found letters on the reverse showing uneven serif thickness, sometimes ballooned or compressed mid-letter, as though the die itself had warped under pressure or was the product of a failed hubbing process. And on certain coins, fine lines run diagonally across Lincoln's face, so precise and repetitive that some suspect a mechanical flaw in the press itself. Perhaps a fractured feeder mechanism that scratched the planchets before striking, while others insisted points to a more sinister theory, a damaged or reused die that should have been decommissioned but was pressed back into service to meet production quotas during a machine outage, a decision made quickly and without documentation. And then came the confidential whistleblower accounts, former Mint employees who, speaking under anonymity, alluded to a brief but chaotic period during early spring 2017 when a batch of Denver dies was mistakenly swapped with pre-release dies from a cancelled redesign proposal, and instead of being destroyed, those dies were loaded, tested, and run without proper vetting. A failure in oversight that was internally acknowledged but never publicly reported, resulting in a limited number of coins with unauthorized design traits that match exactly what collectors are now seeing: distorted lettering, incomplete shield devices, and odd planchet reactions to cleaning solutions, including discoloration and toning patterns that don't appear on any other year's mintage. Is it possible that within the walls of the Denver Mint, behind layers of regulation and silence, a small team made a decision, whether out of necessity, error, or ambition, that led to the quiet creation of a coin that broke every rule? Could the 2017 Lincoln Cent be the legacy of a forgotten initiative, the residue of an experimental strike meant only for internal eyes, or the result of something even stranger, an intentional anomaly meant to mark time, send a signal, or test the response of an ever-vigilant collector community? And as more specimens continue to surface, each one seemingly more twisted, ghosted, or baffling than the last, we must ask, what else is still out there, buried in circulation, hiding in change drawers, slipped unnoticed into rolls awaiting discovery? The chase has only just begun, and the secrets buried in the 2017 Lincoln Cent are only beginning to unravel, one coin at a time. Last. Today we unlock one of the most chilling, overlooked, and persistently unsolved mysteries in American numismatics, a story that has haunted coin collectors and mint historians alike for over 2 decades and continues to provoke whispers, speculation, and late-night examinations under microscopes. The strange and shadowy tale of the 1997 Lincoln Cent, a coin minted during what should have been a routine year of production, a time of high output stability at the U.S. Mint, and yet somehow, somewhere, something slipped through the cracks and transformed a small handful of these otherwise ordinary coins into anomalies so bizarre, so riddled with inexplicable errors and conflicting features, that to this day, no single theory has been able to fully explain their existence. And so we ask, what if a small mistake, just one press misalignment, one die mix-up, one unchecked prototype, led to the creation of a coin that wasn't supposed to exist, a coin whose very physical structure defies official mint records and whose every surface seems to whisper that the truth is being hidden? It began quietly, with collectors in the late 1990s reporting oddities and change, Lincoln Cents from 1997 that had features just slightly, eerily, off, coins where the lettering appeared swollen or distorted, as though struck with too much pressure or from a misaligned die, specimens that exhibited doubling on Liberty, or In God We Trust, but didn't match the classically known categories of die doubling, and instead looked more like ghost impressions, faint echoes of devices that hovered just off the main strike like shadows in metal, barely perceptible unless viewed at the perfect angle under the perfect light. And then came the questions about the mint marks, because while all 1997 cents were officially struck at either Philadelphia or Denver, several specimens were discovered with D mint marks that appeared off-center, partially filled, or oddly flat. And some even lacked a mint mark entirely despite showing every other trait of a Denver-issued coin, leading some to suspect that rogue die swapping or regional die testing may have occurred off the books, a possibility that only grew more believable when veteran numismatists started encountering 1997 cents with inverted or rotated reverses, 180-degree flips that hinted at alignment errors that should have been caught instantly by modern minting equipment, and yet weren't, or weren't meant to be. And the mystery deepened as more advanced collectors began testing the metal content of these unusual specimens and found inconsistent zinc-to-copper ratios, micro-pitting beneath the plating, and strange edge textures that pointed to planchet flaws unlike anything seen in other coins from the same year, with some pieces showing evidence of what experts call split plating, a failure in the bonding process between the copper surface and zinc core that can expose the underlying metal in streaks or spots. Yet in these 1997 examples, the flaws were so oddly symmetrical, so seemingly intentional in their location, that some began to theorize they weren't errors at all, but perhaps residues of a secret testing process involving alternate planchets or unfinished experimental blanks reintroduced to the press line for unknown reasons. And then came the most chilling detail. A small number of 1997 cents were found with faint but distinct die clash marks. Impressions where the obverse and reverse dies had struck each other without a planchet between them, leaving ghostly outlines of the Lincoln Memorial on Lincoln's chest, or distorted fragments of lettering bleeding through the opposite face, evidence of a catastrophic minting event for which there is no recorded incident in the official 1997 Denver or Philadelphia mint reports, which begs the question, were these clashes covered up, or were they the result of an off-site test strike? Possibly connected to the preparation of a now-lost commemorative series or a die trial that was ultimately cancelled, and whose physical evidence was supposed to be destroyed but wasn't? Further muddying the waters are the confidential reports shared by retired mint employees who, under anonymity, recalled a series of rushed equipment recalibrations and unexpected die shuffling that took place during the early spring of 1997, allegedly due to an unexpected interruption in production that caused hundreds of thousands of blanks to be temporarily rerouted through alternate press lines. And in that chaos, it is believed by some that experimental or improperly labeled dies were mounted and used without full QA verification, resulting in a limited and untraceable batch of 1997 cents bearing traits that don't match any known die pairings, and don't follow expected striking behavior for that year. And those traits have only become more compelling as more collectors step forward with stories of 1997 cents found in sealed rolls that contain faint design doubling on only one half of the coin, with the other side crisp and clean, suggesting mid-run die rotations or partial hubbing events that should have rendered the coin a reject, yet clearly didn't. And even more mysterious are the reports of 1997 cents that, under UV light or specialized imaging equipment, reveal microscopic surface abrasions that suggest the presence of design elements never included in the final Lincoln cent model, like barely legible traces of shield outlines, misplaced stars, or arc shapes that seem to belong to other coin types entirely, as though a template die had been partially hubbed onto the wrong blank and then struck into circulation during a moment of oversight, which raises terrifying questions about what else might have been going on at the mint that year. Was there an abandoned redesign? A secret initiative to test the dual metal layering process? An unauthorized private mint collaboration that slipped into the official run without disclosure? And what of the coins with invisible or malformed initials, where VDB, beneath Lincoln's shoulder appears smudged, reversed, or missing entirely, or where the details on Lincoln's coat are so flattened they seem eroded, yet the rest of the coin remains razor sharp, suggesting a die overpolishing so extreme it bordered on intentional sabotage? Or perhaps a desperate effort to erase part of a design that should never have been there to begin with. And as collectors dig deeper, strange patterns emerge. Clusters of era coins all trace back to similar bank sources in isolated geographic pockets, like northern Colorado and western Pennsylvania, suggesting that a small, unacknowledged batch of misstruck or mis-die coins was sent out through specific Federal Reserve channels before the mint could intercept them, and with each new discovery, the obsession grows. The theories get wilder, and the community of researchers starts to believe that the 1997 Lincoln cent may not be a simple case of unnoticed error, but rather the tip of an iceberg of undocumented production anomalies tied to changes in U.S. mint policy, technology upgrades, or even internal resistance from engravers or machinists who feared automation was rendering their roles obsolete and decided to leave a legacy in metal. But what if the truth is even more complicated? What if the 1997 Lincoln cent represents a fork in the numismatic timeline, a year when the transition from analog to digital minting processes began to introduce systemic glitches, hybrid misalignments, and trace design artifacts caused by software bugs, die calibration misreads, or failed prototype automation systems that were never publicly acknowledged, but which may have malfunctioned in ways we're only beginning to understand, leaving behind physical anomalies that now present as unexplained minting errors, but are actually the scars of a rapidly modernizing infrastructure that didn't catch every flaw before it was too late? Every week, more of these strange coins surface, coins with double dates, ghosted letters, misaligned reverse designs, shield outlines over memorial architecture, extra columns, invisible initials, sunken features, raised plating blisters, split planchets, and even off-metal strikes that test just outside the tolerances for zinc. hinting at alternate compositions or rejected blanks from other denominations or countries. And yet, through all this, the U.S. Mint has remained silent, offering no comment, issuing no corrections, releasing no technical bulletins for collectors to study, leaving the numismatic community to wonder if this silence is a deliberate effort to bury an embarrassing oversight, or a deeper attempt to avoid revealing a larger and more systemic issue involving outsourced blank manufacturing, machine software updates gone awry, or lost documentation surrounding design trials that were never meant to be known. As collectors chase these shadow coins through flea markets, bank rolls, estate sales, and online auctions, the story only intensifies, the clues multiply, and the puzzle pieces refuse to fit into a neat conclusion, which means this is more than a coin. It's a mystery frozen in copper-plated zinc, a whispered message struck into metal under uncertain circumstances. And every new detail uncovered brings us closer to a truth no one has yet dared to fully articulate, that perhaps the 1997 Lincoln cent was not a mistake at all, but a deliberate anomaly born out of a moment of transition, secrecy, or even quiet rebellion. And if that's true, then what else might still be out there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to look close enough to finally see what the Mint never intended anyone to find?